Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Open Book Entrepreneur. I'm really thrilled that we have Hayley here from UK. She's functional nutrition practitioner and into holistic health, and she has a wonderful story to share. So, Hayley, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Yes, so yeah, I'm Hayley, retrained in functional nutrition after I had my own health issues. Do you want me to share about that and explain what my health
Please
issues
do,
were?
yes.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, over 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune issue. It was actually a thyroid issue called Graves' disease. And at the time, remember I didn't know anything about holistic health. I didn't know anything about autoimmune, and I was very shocked and scared. I went to the doctor and I saw various consultants, and basically I was told that the only way forward was to take conventional medication. I looked at the side effects that were listed on that sheet, and I just, in my heart, knew there had to be another way. Although I was told at the time there isn't another way, whatever you change in your diet or you have to take these pills to resolve the health issue. But I did my own research, and I was lucky to find some practitioners in the UK that I worked with. And thankfully, I managed to turn that around without having to resort to conventional medication. One caveat I will say, that, we can't always avoid conventional medication. So it's very important that we look at our own health and have a very informed decision. But thankfully, I was able to turn things around. And that gave me a passion then, because I just thought of all the people that routinely just accept what they're told. And sadly, once we're started down the road of medication, often that leads to more medication, and that's kind of like the slippery slope of health, where we end up with all sorts of different things going on. So yeah, my passion now is to kind of like shout that from the rooftops and just help people understand that we can be our own health advocate and there's lots we can do.
Totally. Thanks for sharing that. And then now, so now you're working and helping others. So what do you usually help people with?
So there's lots of things that I help people with, whether that's anxiety or thyroid issues. Ultimately, once I start, whenever I start working with somebody, we have first a very in-depth, sort of an hour-long session where we go through everything right the way back in their health history. So it's like I'm peeling an onion to find out what's really causing the issues. Ultimately, it very often comes down to gut health. So we tend to work on the gut because that impacts so many things. Even with my health issue, there was an element of gut health there. So very often I'm working with gut health, and then other things, lifestyle and diet, and bringing in supplements to sort of help people turn things around.
Wonderful. And when you're talking about gut health, I mean, this is I heard this few times already, and I would really like to know if you can help us a little bit or share some tips on, how to actually keep the healthy gut, or how this is affecting the rest of the body, and also, maybe like you mentioned something like when people eat processed food, it's affecting their health. Can you just tell us a little bit more about those things?
Yeah, sure. So with gut health, well, really, if you take it down to what we're eating, sadly now in our everyday life, and I was also kind of victim to that before I understood everything. It's so easy that we go to the supermarket, and the majority of the food that we pick up and put in our trolley is packaged food, it's processed food. And if you look at the ingredient list, you don't really understand what even is in that food. And so we're putting that stuff into our body, and that's causing all sorts of issues. And as we go on, sort of year on year on, our body's struggling. It always kind of wants to be doing its best for us, but actually, if we're not putting in the right nutrients, it's very difficult for us to do, for it to do that for us. So it's all about thinking about what we're putting in our body. With the gut health, when we're eating processed foods, we're often finding that we're not having enough fiber, we're not drinking enough water, all of the very basic things that we're not doing. And that over years has, sort of a detrimental effect on us. So it's really about going right the way back to basics and thinking about, we want our body to be able to perform well for us. We want to be able to live a healthy life into our old age. We don't want our last years to be, sort of bedridden or suffering with disease. So we have to think ahead about what we're putting in so that our body can actually repay us with that good health.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with number of things here, and then on top of that as well, like I hear this as well a lot, that we should really hydrate ourselves and stuff. So what's the good sort of way of remembering this, for example, and also what is the good reason to hydrating ourselves? Because obviously people like to make these decisions to hydrate themselves, but it's not really explained why do we have to do that. So can you help us with that, please?
Yeah, sure. So when we think about it, the body is made up of of water, basically. A big percentage of the body is made up of water. Therefore, if we don't have good clean water going in, and that is optimal, that we need clean water going in. So I won't go into necessarily, because we're all in different parts of the world, but making sure that you're not just drinking sort of tap water, that you are having a good filtered water so it's clean. That helps to regenerate our cells. It helps us kind of going to the toilet, sort of kidney issues, brain issues. Ultimately, there's so much that comes back to the fact that we're putting in the right sort of hydration into our body. It's also possible to, I know it's difficult sometimes to remember to, to have that water content. I try to, before I allow myself to have anything else in the day, I try and think, right, I need to have that water content, because when we've been sleeping, also it's really good to make sure we're drinking clean water, or perhaps having water with a squeeze of lemon juice. That helps to get rid of the toxins that have accumulated overnight. So if we can do that in the morning, so I try to do that. I do that. I drink water before I allow myself to have any of the other things that maybe I'd like to drink. So, early on in the day, I've already ticked off quite a big chunk of my water content before I've gone into anything else. So I find that works for me. I know some of my clients actually have a water bottle, and they keep like a tag around it, and they move it down so that they know when they've taken so much water. But yeah, it's definitely something to think about, and whatever works for you to make sure that you remember to do that. It does seem a very basic thing, but it's things like that and movement, things that we just don't do in the right quantities anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And also something you mentioned there as well in the beginning was you're helping people with anxiety or depression, if I heard well. And is that like when you're helping people with anxiety and depression, is it more to do with, like, for example, if someone is overweight, then they eat well and they lose weight and then they're feeling better about themselves, or it's by changing their habits and eating better food, they're automatically started to feel better? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, so it could be either, but again, very often I'm kind of it. I always find when I research and when I'm working with people, it always comes back to basically the same thing, and it's the same with anxiety. And I'll just retract that. So stress, unfortunately, as we all know, stress we can't get away from. You know, in the years ago, we would basically wouldn't really experience stress unless we were faced with a wild animal, and then our body goes into stress and we're running away from that animal. These days, every day there's some kind of stressful situation, so we can't get away from it. And the body can get caught in that stressful situation. So it's about finding ways to manage that stress, you know, whether that's breathing exercises or other tools that we can bring in to help people to deal and cope with that stress. So stress management, so that impacts the anxiety as well. So initially, if I'm working with somebody with anxiety, I would look for like quick wins to help them feel better initially. But again, very often what we find is that a lot of our happy hormone is created in the gut. And so very often that you will find with anxiety, depression, or even OCD, things like that, there's some component going on in the gut health that needs to be addressed. So I don't know if you've heard of the gut brain axis, but you know, it's a bidirectional thing that's going on. So it's really important to make sure that the gut is healthy as well.
And how do you check the health of the gut? I mean, do you do it through laboratories or some other ways, or?
Yeah, so we can do functional stool tests. So that's, you know, we can then look at that and see exactly what's going on with the microbes in the gut. Then we can work out, you know, if there's any you know, infections or parasites or anything like that, that we then know what to supplement with and how to help that. But it's really good to get a functional test if we can. It's obviously not possible for everyone because it's an additional expense, but if we can do that, it's a really good way to get a benchmark and to see exactly what's going on in the gut.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing all these wonderful tips and your story as well. And if someone wants to actually get in touch with you or find out more about you or connect to you, how they can do that?
Yeah, so I've got my website, which is www.yourhealthyabundantlife.com. And I'm also on Instagram as well and Facebook at Your Healthy Abundant Life.
Wonderful. Yeah. So I will actually try to share these links in the description of this video, and you know, wherever we actually post the podcast as well. So yeah, thank you very much for being a guest today. Thank you all for watching and listening to this episode, and see you in the next episode of Open Book Entrepreneur.
Thank you for having me.